Hello everyone, welcome back again. My name is Teja and you're watching Run with Abhi YouTube channel. Today I was here again to discuss about the topic from the concept called servlets, and the topic name is initialization parameters. And what we're going to discuss in this topic in this session is introduction to servlets parameters. Initialization parameters in servlets is the first topic. And the methods of initialization parameters is the second topic, and the types of initialization parameters with examples is the third topic. Let's get into the topic. And at first topic, introduction to initialization parameters in servlets. Introduc- Initialization parameters are stored in the form of key value page, which are going to stored in the web.xml page, mainly .xml page, and we're going to get it from the Java file or and checking it based on we recommend. And inside the web.xml page, we are going to keep this key value page or initialization parameters inside init parameter tag. And inside init parameter tag, we're going to open init param name as as the name as the parameter or tag for the parameter name, and param value tag for the value of the parameter. As servlets are mainly used to handle the web applications based on our requirements, and XML is the main file that is going to handle the servlets. Let's see the syntax of initialization parameters. As we are going to write or specify the initialization parameters inside the web.xml page, the web app is the main tag. Inside the main this web app tag, we are going to write all the code that is going to perform any action in the servlet page. And inside the web app, we're going to use servlet tag to, mention or specify the name of the servlet, the Java class used to perform the action on the servlet, etc. And also the init parameter tag inside the servlet. And the tags inside the XML page are user friendly, as the XML is an extensible markup language, which is an extension of HTML with tag names specified by the user, and the tags must be closed and open and closed. Inside the init parameter tag, we mention parameter name inside the param name tags, and the parameter value inside the param value tags. And we're closing this init parameter servlet and web app tags. And let's see the second topic of our today's session is methods of initialization parameters. The servlet initialization parameters are retrieved by using the servlet config interface. But inside this interface, we're having certain methods to get the parameter values by mentioning its names, and a collection of the parameters inside the web app tag and the name of the servlet that we're specifying. The first method is public string get init parameter of string space name. Here string is the type of the name, and name is the name that we're going to add mentioned in the web app tag web.xml file. It returns the value of the name that we have specified. An enumeration space get init parameter returns the enumeration of all the initial parameters names, and servlet gets servlet name returns the name of the servlet that we mentioned in the servlet tag. And let's see the third topic that we are going to see in the session is types of initialization parameters. Here we are having only two types of initialization parameters in servlets. And first one is servlet specific initialization parameter, which is only specific or used for only one servlet page, and the application specific application servlet initialization parameter, which is used to in many pages based on the application that we are going to use. Let's see the syntax of servlet initialization parameters. Both the servlet specific and application specific initialization parameters are same. A slight difference between them are the servlet specific initialization parameter are mentioned inside a servlet page with inside init parameter tag, with names as init param name and init param name and param value. Whereas in application specific initialization parameter, we are going to mention them inside the context param tag with param name and param value. This is the only difference that is between solid specific and application specific. Let's see an example to find it. Here, these are the imports that we're going to use. As I am using Eclipse, it will automatically import the classes, interfaces that we are using inside this. Let's have a look about the imports. And the class that we are using here is servlet valid.java. This is the class, and as it is a servlet, and it is a we are using this based on HTTP servlet page, which is an extension of servlet class. So we are going to extend it HTTP servlet, and we're as we all know that the initialization parameter is get used using the interface called servlet config. So I'm creating an object in the inside this class as servlet config with name object as CFG, and init is the main method that is executed only once for the entire the servlet lifecycle, and it is the starting code inside code function or anything inside the servlet page. And I'm creating an object for the init inside init with servlet config with name as config, which throws servlet exception, which handles the servlet exception. And I'm assigning the value to the cfg is equal to config. And let get into the main code. I'm using do post method, which is specified in the login page with the function as don't show. It does not shows username and password inside the URL. And we are using this request http servlet request comma http servlet request response classes with objects request comma req comma res to handle to get the request and to send the response to the client and the server. And using throws servlet exception and IO exception to handle this type of exceptions inside this. And I'm creating the print writer object to set the output using this object. And res response.set content type of text or HTML, which specifies the output or the content that we are displaying inside this from this Java file is in the form of HTML or text file. And I'm creating two parameters or names with names as UN and PW as username and to get the username and password or to store the username and password from the HTML page. Is like from request.get parameter of user, as user is the name that are specified inside the HTML page, and the password is the name which is specified for the password inside the HTML page. And I'm creating the boolean object boolean variable flag is equal to false to check the login user is valid or invalid. And I'm creating elimination class with type string with name init parameters equal to config dot get initialization parameter names, which gets all the names of the initialization parameters that were specified in the WebExample page into the init parameter tag in enumeration form. And using this while with condition init params dot as next element, it checks the there is there any element inside this inside the init parameter enumeration. And if there is any element, it returns true, so it get into the loop, the cursor get into the loop. And I'm creating two variables with name and password as string type. And with the method with using this object init parameter dot next element, which returns the element present in first element as it is executing the first time first element inside the name variable and store it inside the name variable. And using config dot get init parameter with name. Using where see you see this method in PPT as the main name that were specified here will check for the this name in the web.xml page and get the or set the values inside the store the value inside this pass, which is returned from this method. And I'm checking each and every time for the user is valid or invalid, and setting the flag value. UN is the UNM that we are username that we are getting from the HTML page, which is equal to the name that we are getting from the web XML page, and PW is the password that we are getting from the HTML page, which is equals to password that we are getting from the web XML page. We are checking that, and if it is true, which means that the user is a valid user. So I'm setting the false value flag value is true. After the web file while loop execution, which means that there is no element after at the end of the enumeration, it get out of the loop. And here using this if condition, it check that the user is a valid user or invalid user. As the user is a valid user, it says the flag value is true. And if the if condition is true, it get into the if condition using this print writer object, printing the message as h1 tag inside the h1 tag using valid user. As we mentioned that the output that was mentioned or get is html or text type, and this is a request dispatcher class, which is you basically use it to forward or include our response to the user based on the requirement. It might not be similar or required for this, but just have a look. And here I'm using request dispatcher object, which is equal to request dot get request dispatcher. Is the syntax of this. He inside this method we're specifying the location that we're going to use or the name that we're specified, so that it check for the location and get into the file, or it check for the name that's specified and check in the webxml page and get into that file. And I'm forwarding the response to that file as here I'm specifying the display as a name, and forwarding the request and response to that display name. You can get a clarity about this display after we're going discuss about this web.xml page. And if user is not valid user, it means that by default the flag value is false. So it get into the else loop, else and else condition, and print the value as invalid user, and send the user to login again, so that we're specifying the login page, login.html page is here, and including that login page of bit under the invalids user message. So if you see that here we're using forward, which means that the action is forward to that page, and here using include, so that the action is get into this page. So let's have a look into display select page also .java file also. Here also similarly we're using many imports that were required for this file, and extending HTTP servlet, and creating the object to the HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response, and the exceptions that we're going to handle. And in it is a method or a default method that we're using, which may not be required for all the files. You can directly use the do post method or do get method based on the requirement. And I'm setting an object to the print writer and set the content type as text or HTML as the previous one. And as we are think see that if the valid is a use if the user is a valid user, you are sending this response to the forward the response to the display, which get into this page. So we're just doing the welcome message to the user. So we're getting the name of the user from the HTML page using user request.get parameter of user, and printing the message with the print writer object as welcome the name. And we are referring the login page again for the another user with the name home page. And Let's see into login1.html. Inside the login1.html, this is the common tags as doc type HTML, HTML header, meta char equal to UTF-8, and title is the login validation, and closing the head tag. Inside the body tag, we're going to perform the actions or writing the code that we're going to perform an action. As the username and password are getting inside in the form of text file field, so we're using form with method as post. As you see here in Java file, we use do post method. So we're mentioning here do post method. If we use method is equal to post get, we can mention it has post get method instead of post. And the action is equal to validation, which is set into this web.xml page. We can get a clarity after discussing with web.xml page. And input type is equal to text with the name type with which is the input name is text, and the name is user. As you see, the user and pass were mentioned in the servlet validation page to get the username and password that were entered from the login page, and we are submitting this. If we click on submit, but submit is a default type that we are inside the form tag, which is a button like sub thing that sends the response. And we can click on reset method to, if you click on reset, the username and password that were written will be erased. You should remember this action equal validation name, or you can see this in the webxml page. So let's see into webxml page. As you all know that the webxml, for a webxml starting line is this default line, and inside this web app we're going to perform all the actions that were mentioned. So this is the default name which will not be required for all the files. Display name is equal to servlet login or login servlet, that the name that we are specified which displays on the browser that we are using. And welcome file list is a required field inside the web app, where inside the Eclipse we're going to use the default names. For XML is web.xml, and for JSP is index.jsp, and for HTML is index.html. Without these names, we are going to use, if we are going to use another names instead of that index name, we are going to specify this name as login1.html. If you are using here index.html, we are not going to use this welcome file list tag. So have a look. And inside this servlet tag, we're going to specify this servlet name as login validation as the name of the servlet that we're specifying, and the servlet class as servlet dot test dot servlet valid. Test dot servlet valid is the location of the this Java file that were mentioned. As servlet validation is a class name, and the test is a package name that we are using. And inside the servlet tag, we're mentioning init parameter, and we can mention many number of init parameters based on our requirement. And as you see that inside the init parameter, we're going to use parameter name and param value as user1 pass 1, user2 pass 2, user3 pass 3, like that, and create 4 init parameter tags. And servlet mapping is the major and required tag inside the webxml page, which is checking for the servlet name as the similar to that of this name, login validation, and the login validation. If it is similar, and the URL pattern, that was pattern is the another tag inside the alert mapping tag with validation. As you see that the validation tag is here. So the action performed from the form tag is to login select is set to the login select, as is set check for the login selected, and check the action to the login validation class. So this Likewise, the login file and Java file are set are interconnected or linked with web.xml page. And you all see that if the valid user is a valid user, we're setting or creating another class display servlet with username. Then I'm creating this servlet tag again for this class and setting name as display servlet and the class as test.servlet display servlet. And for each and every servlet tag, we're going to mention a servlet mapping tag with the name as name as that specific servlet tag and the URL pattern as slash display. As you, as I mentioned before, you get clarity after this after the discussing of web.xml page. This display is mentioned here. This so the Java file link check for the display inside this web XML page, and it is for the name URL pattern is for the name servlet name as display servlet, and you check for the display servlet name in the servlet tag, and if it is matched, it sends the action to the test.servlet display servlet, and you send the action to this file. So let's check the output for this. So here you see that it displays the login file first. As I am already logged in, try this program that the data that I entered is displayed user one, and you see that the password is pass one. We click on submit. Welcome to user one. As the user is a valid user, it sends the message to the display servlet and display the message as valid user. And if you click on the home page, it get into the login page again. If you see that if you log in one and pass two, it checks for this. And as I mentioned before, if username and password not correct, it means that the user is a invalid user. So it sets the message as invalid user, and it includes the HTML page that is mentioned here. And if you perform this user three pass three, as we have user one, user two, user three, and user four also, it says is welcome user three. If you click on login, it will display. Likewise, this will, and if you click on clear button, it will remove this file. So this is the topic that we're going to discuss. Hope you guys understand the topic. Thank you.